No. All right. So, hello everyone. Welcome to our December MAA members meeting talk. This month we have our guest Glen Kessler, and thank you all for coming. It looks like we're going to have a very robust crowd tonight, and we're looking forward to that. And I hope Glen is too. I just wanted to first welcome everyone. Thank you, Haral Joshi, for organizing this, and thank you, Glen Kessler, for joining us this month. I'd like to, before Glen begins his presentation, I'd like to go ahead and just share a couple of announcements to this, just by way of housekeeping. If you all will bear with me 1 second as I share my screen, or attempt to. And all I want to do is just kind of first welcome you, and some little bit of parameters here. This month, Glen will be talking about composition and color theory in realist and abstract art. And we are keeping our participants automatically muted, since we do have a large number of attendees. Please do remain muted during the session, and please ask your questions through chat if you would, or use the raise hand button in Zoom, and one of the moderators will call you. We do have some announcements coming up for MAA. MAA is still accepting submissions for the Windridge Vineyards Winter Exhibit in Darnesville. So if you are interested in that, please, you've got a few more hours to do it. Through December 18th, the Celebrating Color and Light show is still happening at the Goldman Art Gallery in Rockville. Please do take our year-end member survey by December 18th. And please also participate in our mini interpretations online gallery. Those submissions will be due by December 20th. So that's coming up soon as well. We have a special field trip happening on January 13th. We will be going to the Yayoi Kusama One with Eternity exhibit at the Hirshhorn Museum. Registration for that's opening up December 28th, and will continue till right before the field trip. So please join us for that. And on January 9th, we will have MAA's 5th members show at the Oasis Art Gallery, which we're excited to be doing. And next month, we will have artist Fred Liceos from Seattle, who will be joining us for our monthly members talk. So that will be that. And I will return the spotlight now to Glen Kessler. Haral, have I missed anything?
No, I think you covered everything. Thank you, Frank. Thank you.
Very good.
Yeah.
Then with no further ado, why don't we turn it over to Glen?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Frank. Thank you, Haral. Thank you, MAA, for the opportunity to speak to you tonight about a topic that I think will be very beneficial for us all, not only to understand how we may be able to use composition and color theory in our painting, but also to unite us in common language, common terms, common ability to share our experience. That's one of the best things I think about a membership organization like this, is bringing together single and disparate artists who are happy to work alone in their studios into a sense of community, a shared community, and a shared language, of course, that we want to have. So hopefully you've got pen and paper ready. I have a lecture that's chock full of notes, and I hope a little bit of fun as well. I always try to provide pretty good edutainment, let's call it, where you're going to learn something and maybe enjoy yourself along the way. So without any further ado, let me go ahead and get rolling with our presentation. And let me just ask if everyone can see the slide that's on the screen now, our title slide. Yeah, a couple of nods, thumbs up, great. All right. Then let me go ahead and preface what we're going to be doing here. Today, we are obviously going to be talking about composition and color theory in realist and abstract art. But I want to kind of start here. If you know me, then you know my goal as an artist, as a teacher, is to simplify and uncomplicate. artistic instruction, to speak in plain language, to demystify myths, to remove dogma and replace it with critical thinking. This goal has been the basis of my instruction my entire life, and was the impetus for designing my 3-year Master Artist program to coordinate those lessons from absolute beginning basics that often aren't covered in basic classes all the way up to a professional artistic practice. My goal has never been to train students on how to be the second best Glen Kessler, but rather how to be the best you that you could possibly be. And how do we do that? I believe that knowing not just how, but why we do what we do as artists will empower us to make powerful and personal art that the world will take note of. And so it's with that education in mind that I look forward to communicating today's lecture. Let's start with some definitions. If we're going to be talking about composition, we have to have a working description of what composition is. Composition is not, as we might believe, the arrangement of elements inside the canvas or page. That is where most people start and stop with composition. Where is the flaw? The flaw is that we need purpose. Composition is the arrangement of elements inside of the canvas or page for the purpose of conveying a point. And I'm sure you've heard from many books, maybe other art teachers, that you just simply cannot put your object that you're painting, your primary element, right in the dead center. Don't just leave it right in the darn center of the composition. That would be a huge compositional mistake. Wait a second. Well, what about if we want to, let me slow my slides down here. What if we want to, oh my gosh, why is it moving ahead? So we've got the object directly in the center and it works just fine. Would you say that that's an okay painting? But if we want to produce a painting that, hold on a second. I don't want that to cycle forward. All right, good. If we want a composition where the object is not in the dead center, we're going to create better atmosphere, better mood. We've heard people say time and time again, don't put the composition. Pause for just 1 second, guys. I want to stop this PowerPoint from cycling forward. So let me just hit the pause button on that just a second so we have a better experience. Let me end our cycle of that. Bear with me, guys, for just a second. My apologies. Mona. Carol, are you seeing just Mona Lisa, or are you seeing Mona and the next slide?
No, two.
You are seeing two? Okay. All right.
Because I think the slides are splitted into section, looks like.
Yeah. I'm
Therefore,
just trying to defeat the, see that little star right there? That's got all our timings in there. And I don't want the timings on there. So let me shut off all of our timings, all of our animations. Oop, slideshow, no timings. All right, we're done. Hopefully that's good.
Yeah.
All right, let's start that one more time. Excellent. All right, we can record again if we're not already.
Yeah, I already started.
Okay, thanks. Thank you so much. All right. So as I was making very dramatic points, let's get back to it. So you would never, of course, never put the object directly in the center of the composition, right? That would be totally ruinous nonsense. We put it in the center when we want that to be our focus. If we want to put the objects to the sides, what we end up seeing is that it creates more drama, more impending sense of drama as the male figure to the right, the female figure to the left, and the space in between becomes so powerful. You would never, ever put the horizon line exactly in the center of the composition, dividing it in half, right? That's John Constable. That's one of the greatest landscape painters of all time. He did it over and over again. Because placing the height of the horizon line isn't a dogmatic rule that we must always avoid the center. It's a purpose. All right. It's a meaning and a story that we create. The lower the horizon line, as in this Jacob van Rysdale painting, the more heaven and the less earth we get. This is a painting by a pious man looking beyond the earthly realm up to heaven. Contrast that with this Courbet, the ultimate realist, who thought you live on earth and then you die. That's really all there is. The sky, what there is almost mockingly high and small up in the top right-hand corner. A testament to the fact that he believed that life exists here on earth and there wasn't much of a hereafter. So a horizon line in the dead center simply speaks about balance between heaven and earth. And isn't that a very pleasing looking image? And of course, you must always, as an artist, make sure that all areas of the canvas are treated equally, right? No, vast areas, empty or very, very dark, devoid of much detail and information, because it focuses us down on the important parts of the picture in this hierarchical structure that Velázquez has drawn up here. He wants us looking down at the court, down at him, and not up at the room. The room serves the purpose, of course, of adding power and drama and intrigue to this scene, making them even more important because of how large it is and how lit they are. Of course, in this composition, where we see Hieronymus Bosch populating the entire composition with equal amounts of information, there's a much more frenetic energy. Nothing is any more or less important than anything else. So again, composition cannot just be a set of dogmatic rules. You'll hear things like the golden rule, golden rectangle, golden ratio, golden proportion, that's going to make a better art. I can show you plenty of terrible paintings that are making use of the golden ratio, and plenty of outstanding paintings that don't. Rule of thirds. It's a great starter, for making asymmetrical composition, but it's only one of many possible scenarios of a composition that you would draw up for yourself. So we don't want to fall into the trap of simply following an approach that we heard from one place or another. Look at art history and find examples. And that's kind of what we're going to do right now. Now, as I mentioned, this is what the point of composition is, but composition is still very robust. As a topic, composition is massive. It's one of the toughest parts that I find to convey as a teacher. So what I've done over my decades of teaching is I've kind of looked through the vastness of art history and tried to distill out 5 major compositional formats. These compositional formats exist in either singular isolation, or we find multiple crossover between these 5 points in each work of art. And more than just having 5 categories to stuff compositions in, I want to explore the why. I want to explore what are the benefits and what are the liabilities of each of these 5 categories. So again, let's take some notes here. Our first compositional format is iconic. And an iconic composition means that the main element is going to be centered. It's more or less symmetrical along that usually vertical axis. There is an extreme focus on the subject, the named subject, in this case, the angel. That's Gabriel. And the background is typically of less or even no importance. That gold background really just serving to let us know that we're in the heavenly realm. That's where we find Mona, of course. She is an iconic composition. We are made aware of her as the primary subject, and some people you might talk to as one of the most viewed paintings in all of the world, and might not know that there's a landscape in the background. Right? We're not even thinking about the landscape in the background. We're so concerned with her. It's not just for portraits. It's a lovely painting by Israel Hirschberg, a contemporary painter of a lovely cypress tree or two. And they are roughly centered right in the middle of the composition. And of course, still life can also be composed in this way. We are not subject matter specific. We are really just talking about the way that it's oriented. And I've got a couple of quizzes later to test you guys, see if we're paying attention to some of these compositional formats here. This is by Dwayne Kaiser, the contemporary painter down in Richmond who does painting a day. Our second compositional format, there we go, is the dynamic format. Now, in the dynamic compositional format, we are trying to create energy and motion. We achieve this typically through diagonals. Diagonals seek to move us through the composition a little quicker and in opposition to the vertical and horizontal structure of the original rectangle. And so this one you'll see entering from the bottom right, zipping up to the middle left, and then back again to the top center, mostly along the route of that waterfall. And you might go vice versa, but that's the kind of diagonal angle that we move through there. What is meant by this phrase, disregard for the picture plane? Well, just to establish what the picture plane is, the picture plane is that imaginary sheet of glass that separates you in the real world from the image and what's called the pictorial fiction. That's everything that exists inside of the illusion, if it is an illusion, or the abstract composition. But there is a barrier that exists between you two, an imaginary sheet of glass. And in this dynamic composition, we are typically trying to move in the Z plane. We're trying to move depth-wise. So not just flat, left and right, diagonal, up and down, but also deeply into or out of the composition. So that disregard for the picture plane, it's not referential to the picture plane, as we'll see in the next one. It is moving in defiance kind of that picture plane. So moving in space. Again, not only appropriate for rivers and roads, but here's a beautiful painting by the contemporary artist Rackstraw Downs, where he's using those diagonals. He's actually going to the left and to the right, kind of zipping around. And you can really feel that that energy and that motion. You're swept deeply back into the space. A young contemporary artist, Kim van der Hoek, a little more abstract as well. None of these concepts are unique to realism or abstraction. They really kind of unify all styles. You can even use figures, the bodies of figures, the man's leg and body as it kind of moves through this composition. And then of course we pick up the female and then back through the blue that travels to the top right. And so we've got a really lovely diagonal motion that we're getting through the leg as we travel in and out. So again, this is that dynamic composition.
Who painted that?
That's who do you think painted that?
Oh, I'm looking for.
You'll make a good guess. Yes.
John Singer Sargent.
Very
Sorolla
close
or
to- yeah.
Sargent?
It was Sargent. Very good. It was one of the two, right?
Was
Very good.
Sargent.
That is John Singer Sargent, a beauty. Our third compositional format is the neoclassical. This one operates very much like a stage. On that stage, we find the elements are quite referential to both the rectangle of the canvas or paper or whatever you have, and that's the vertical and the horizontal, as well as the picture plane. There are not typically a lot of diagonals present in a neoclassical composition. Again, it's just set up kind of like a theatrical stage, right? I've not seen too many stages that zip deeply back into deep into the house. Everything happens on a fairly shallow plane. What this is ideal for is narrative, right? We've created a stage. Let's carry out our acts on that stage. So that, as everyone know, this one's a David. Now this one right here on the screen, this is a very early Philip Guston painting. Moderators, if you wouldn't mind muting, I think we've got a couple people off of mute. We're getting some background noise. This is a Philip Guston painting, a nice shallow semi-cubist painting. Done a little bit after Picasso's Cubism in between the wars. And, a beautiful musing on tenement house living, these children kind of dressed up. We can find it appropriate for still life. This very pixelated, grainy version of a William Bailey painting presents these inanimate actors on their stage. In fact, this one's charming. I know he's thinking about that David painting, The Oath of the Horatii, because of that archway that he's got. It's almost the same. It's almost that same archway he's put into this still life. Very cool. And again, you can even have that appropriate for landscape painting. Van Rysdale very much thinks of his landscapes as a stage, a forum for showcasing his actors. His actors typically are clouds and churches, the church breaking through the horizon line, that telephone up to God, and then the clouds, inspiring us to think about where the action should be placed, where our minds should be focused. So that's the neoclassical composition at stage. Our fourth is the modern compositional format. And in the modern compositional format, we find partial or cropped objects. We're going to find that the objects are typically up against the picture plane, or in some cases, maybe even passing through, but they're very near to our picture plane, almost like you zoomed in, as opposed to, I deliberately picked a church here, that Van Rysdale, which is quite zoomed out on the church. Bonus points if anybody knows who this is, you can put it in the chat. I'll reveal it after the next slide. And amazingly, we find in the modern composition, because we've zoomed in so much on the normal and depicted subject, that the painting is actually about something other than the depicted subject. It's not actually about, in this case, a house of worship. It's about light, it's about color, it's about positive and negative shapes. It's kind of a formal painting. No one has guessed? All right. That is a Walter Sickert. Save that one for Wordle. You're ready, or for Artle. All right. So you're ready for Sickert, Sickert. He's a British impressionist. And for a spell, they thought that he was Jack the Ripper. He's been proven not to be. That silly. This is, of course, Claude Monet's painting or one of many of the Rouen Cathedral. Monet was not actually a terribly pious man. Why did he paint the Rouen Cathedral 38 different times? Couldn't get enough of it. He loved the texture. He loved the way that the light played off of it. And, so this painting is not at all about devotional church. In fact, if anything, it's the opposite of that. He's chopped off the spires. He's given us very little approach. It's a very unapproachable cathedral. In fact, this is just about light, color, and the changing nature of painting over the course of a day. There's another Dwayne Kaiser. We've zoomed in on the glass to really focus in on the abstract qualities that make up a fractal, splintered image like that. And the 20th century painter, Philip Pearlstein, who, even though he enlisted live models and never painted from a photograph, always painted from life, welcomed in the photographic cropping that is so unique to our modern era, in the way that it can dehumanize people if they are cropped. We've gotten a little numb to this. We don't want to be numb to this fact. When you cut somebody's head off, it's a pretty violent thing. When you cut their knee and their arm off, that's a pretty violent thing. So all of you model session folks, remember that. Don't amputate your figures unless you mean to. Just place the top and the bottom where you like them. All right, our final compositional format is the all over. And for those who've heard this lecture before, this was the alternative. That name was difficult for people to remember, so I'm going to switch it up to all over. We'll still keep that all part, so you'll have that. But the all over composition is randomly organized, disconnected elements. It is usually populated with small elements. It's not always, but usually it's densely populated with small elements. I'll show you one that isn't. There's a lovely little dancing Bruegel scene, a party. What's the feeling you get? Let me ask you guys, what's the feeling you get when you see a scene like this that's got so much action, so many little pieces going on? Does it feel nice and orderly and organized, or chaotic, wild, like a party should feel? Yeah, all right, everyone seems to be having a very good time. Some people are having too good of a time. Let me move on to the next slide before you look too closely. Here's something that'll calm us down. The Garden of Earthly Delights. Yes, the all over compositions are not always lascivious, but this one does happen to be, and it is just absolutely rich and dense. Everywhere you look, like a Where's Waldo, you find information. You find equally valuable information, nothing more important than the other. There isn't a strict hierarchical sense of this is more important than that, as we saw in the iconic composition. Everything is equally as important. And here's the one that's not quite as dense. This is an Oud Nerdrum painting where these figures happen to be floating through the ether, who knows? But none of the figures are really any more or less important than any other, where our eye is meant to move kind of chaotically scattered across the entire composition. This can even be applied to a still life. So this is an Audrey Flack painting from I think the 80s. Musing on taboos and spirituality and different modes of superstition and whatnot and chance, kind of all in there. But it's meant to be chaotic. It's meant to be something that you can just look at and digest. So we see the all over composition has a very different energy than the iconic, the neoclassical, the dynamic, or that close modern. This one has a little modern in it. Do you see that? So what I want to close with is that even though we have these 5 different compositional formats, paintings throughout history don't neatly bundle themselves into one or the other. Have you ever thought about these 5 and said, no, I don't want to stray from one to the other? No, they often do cross over. These 5 points just as an assist to allow us not only to understand how we might graphically, formally compose our compositions, but why? Why might we do it? Because as we'll see, those different compositional formats provide that different feeling. How does this Kandinsky make you feel? It's wild, right? It's energetic. So he would choose an all-over composition to achieve that. If it was neat and orderly, a nice neoclassically arranged set of variables, you wouldn't feel that energy and that din that he was so passionate about, that sense of music and movement that the burgeoning futurist was trying to conjure with this early work. Now, how about this one? What do we think this compositional format is, or formats is? Go ahead and put it in the chat if you would. I'll wait. I'm checking the chat now too. So I see some words in there. Commotion compared to Mondrian. Yes, very good. Very good. Very good. You guys have been paying attention. I love it. They're coming in fast and furious. Yes, neoclassical. And why? Because we have a reference to the stage. We've got verticals, we've got horizontals, right? There's some movement in here. Now, the only thing that's going to tweak it just a little bit. Good. I like that modern from Pat. Don't know that we get too much. So something's got to get cropped. Eventually it has to get cropped off. This is a pretty tasteful and respectful cropping, wouldn't you say? Right? Nothing too major. The only thing major would be maybe that steeple at the top right. That's cropped off. But yes, I think that this one would probably be mostly neoclassical, but just a little dynamic, because we're being pushed from the near figures to the deeper figures. And of course, why would the artist have done this? This is a very sad picture. If this picture doesn't make you cry, then look at it longer. Study a little bit, how to read a painting, because that's poor Christ back there being whipped, being brutally dealt with. And these 3 jerks in the foreground are just having a nice little chat, oblivious. His suffering going on right behind them, and they could care less. We are swept back to Christ. That's the most important. That's the actor. But that dynamic composition is whipping us between the two, makes us hopefully feel a little bit of the foreground figures' lack of interest in our poor guy's situation in the back there. That's a tragic picture. How about this one? It's Alyssa Monk's painting. Yes, Alyssa Monk's. And that's the entirety of this painting, just a little study. This one's interesting, right? Definitely 2 I can think of. Yeah, central, we call it iconic, I think is what you're looking for. And Pat has got it. I think Carolyn, if you meant iconic, which I think you did, and Pat, who said modern, I think you're both right. It's cropped tight on the face, but that eye is in the dead center. The artist has chosen to paint the background, the nose, forehead, cheek, much looser than the eye. See, that eye has got much more deep detail. It's really slowed down, pushed it a little more patiently. All right. How about this one? This Rothko painting. Of course, we know this is Rothko, right? One of the most obvious painters, one of the most well-known painters of all time. But have you ever thought about what this one is? Oh, good guess on all over. No, that would be his buddy, and we'll get to him in a little bit, right? Oh, I like it. I like it. Yes, I think Margot and Pat have got it. Iconic and neoclassical. Why? Because we're led to that central element, but we're also reminded of the stage. Rothko thought of these initially as landscapes. He thought of these very much in that Van Rysdale model, that you would have that, that kind of balance and that kind of pleasing calm of the horizon to kind of steady yourself, and then that more central character kind of in the middle. So yeah, so we see how this works in terms of different compositional formats. So again, every painting, and we could, I mean, I'm just going to spare you going on for 700 more, but every painting, now look at it through the lens of which compositional format: iconic, dynamic, neoclassical, modern, or all over. And which combinations of, and what is the impact from it? Yeah, Judith is saying dynamic for the eye piece because your eye as the viewer kept moving through the work. Well, we hope our eye will always move through the work, but we would really need depth and diagonals to really qualify as the dynamic. So I like that. But many of the compositional formats, your eye can move through the entirety of it. Everything except really iconic, I would say. Very good. All right. All right, so this lecture, I believe, was called Composition and Color Theory. And so let's cover the color theory. All right. So those of you who studied with me know that we think of color in very manageable, quantifiable, measurable terms. I'm quite proud of this painter's compass color wheel that has really changed the fortunes of so many artists and students to be able to make color mixing the most powerful part of their artistic arsenal and known and knowable. So just a quick, I'm not going to give you a whole color wheel deep dive. That's another lecture we can do another time. But just to go over the bullet points, every color that we can see has a hue, a saturation, and a value. That is it. All colors have all three. No color has more than these three elements. No color has less than these three elements. What are these elements? Hue. Hue is, as we would kind of go around the color wheel, we're thinking about what family of color we're looking at. So a fire hydrant typically is red. A fire hydrant's hue is not blue purple. It is not yellow. It is not even red orange or red purple. It is red. That is our hue. The hue of a banana, depends how ripe it is, could be anywhere from yellow green through yellow is what I was thinking, through yellow orange, right? That is the hue of a banana. A banana is not blue, missed that one, is not red. That is a banana. Make sense? All right, that's hue, the family of color. Saturation is the intensity or the subdued or the subtleness of the color. So while we might think of an orange, the fruit, an orange, as an intense orange hue, something out here intense, a piece of wood might be a medium saturation orange, or if you look closely, you'll see that there's an orange quality to this little guy in here. This is a subtle or subdued orange, a very low saturation, almost grayish brown in the orange family. Each of the subdued, just make sure to turn up your brightness if you can't see that. Each of the subdued versions of those hues is kind of what I would call kind of grayish, whereas the medium saturations are what I might call brownish, if we can think of brown not only as something that lives in the red and orange realm, but, you know, a browner blue or blue-green or green, you know, think of olive green, mustard yellow, mauve, kind of over here, and then down to subdued. In the dead center of the wheel, illustrated here, we do see a completely neutral gray, an area where our eye is incapable of perceiving differentiated hues. So we're just going to kind of let the boundaries between the hues fade away there and get a nice gray circle. All right. Anyway, that's saturation. That's hue going around the wheel, saturation going through the wheel. And our third and final variable is value. Now, this wheel doesn't truly demonstrate value, but value is the easiest of the three variables for us to consider, and the one that you typically need to plot as much as we use the wheel. But let me just run through value. For really explaining value, I'd need about 10 color wheels, each one a little lighter or darker than the last to illustrate. Now, each of these, I won't get too dark because it's hard to see on our screens, but it doesn't matter whether we're very dark or whether we're pastel light, each of those colors still has a hue and still has a saturation. The red is still red. In its most intense, it's the most intense version of the red. And as you move towards the center, it gets grayer and grayer. It's harder to see when it's so light, of course, but that is something that we see. Same thing when it gets too dark, hard to perceive it so much as they get darker, but there are those differentiations. So the color wheel at its kind of maximum saturation, as I've kind of left it here, has a bunch of different values, but value is easy to think about. You would just add light or add dark to the color that we're perceiving. So does that make sense? Let's quiz. Let's see how well we've been paying attention. And heaven help me, should we do this in the chat, or should we do this? You guys want to come off mute? We're going to play a little game. All right, fun game. I'm going to show you a color, and you tell me what hue it is. All right. So if you'll be responsible, let's all come off mute for the next 5 minutes. You get to all be off mute, and let's scream out as loud as you can. Don't wake up your children if you have them at home. What hue, what family of color this is?
Red.
Red.
Red. Orange.
That went very well, Hiral. We were nervous about that. That went very well. I heard mostly red. I did hear a couple people say pink. Now, pink isn't one of our hues. When we start adding more terms like that, we only complicate things for ourselves. Pink is a red purple, and I would agree with you on that. How about that one?
Green.
Too easy. Too easy. That's a super high saturation one, right? So that's very easy. And you'll find that you can decode the hue quicker when the saturation is higher. What's that?
Brown.
Orange.
Orange.
Red.
Orange.
Orange.
Red. Brown.
It's brown.
Red.
It's orange.
All of you
Red.
saying, all right, don't fight about it. Don't fight about it.
It's orange.
I love it. Don't fight about it. Don't fight about it. Everyone who said brown, again, you're complicating your life because the question was, what is the hue? We'll get to the notion of brown. But if you consider every time you see a brown, asking yourself, is it a red brown, a red orange brown, an orange brown, a yellow orange brown? What you're doing is you're empowering yourself to then know how to color mix it. And we'll get to where the pigments live on the color wheel. So you'll know, do I start with a red? Do I start with a yellow? Do I start with an orange? And then what do I do to it? So yeah, this one's kind of that red, orange, or red, depending on your monitors. And I know there's going to be some variety here. So I'm not going to.
Blue. Purple. Blue.
Ooh,
Blue.
purple.
Blue.
This
You
could be
guys-
purple, you know.
Yeah. You guys are great. Yes.
Blue.
Blue purple would be our hue. Remember, our hues we only have 12 options here, right? Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple. And then the tertiaries, if you want to call them, that's not the proper terminology, but the red, purple, blue, purple. This one is a blue purple. You nailed it. I heard Margot right at the beginning. Very, very well done, gang. All right, they're getting harder.
Blue.
Blue.
Blue, green.
That's a green. It's a green gray.
Blue.
Green blue.
All right, blue, green, good. Blue, gray, not good, right? Why? Because we're just going to be mixing black and white or something, dumb if we think about it. Oh, it's just gray, right? Let's think about what the hue is. And then I'm going to start with a blue to make this one. I'm going to quiet it down. And I'll explain how if you don't know how yet, to do that later. Excellent. This is a blue, green. I heard a couple of you guys really nail it. And again, yes. All right, you get a trophy. But maybe your monitor is a little different, so I'm not gonna play. All right, hardest one yet.
Blue, purple.
Blue.
Gray, blue.
It's a gray.
Yeah,
Yellow.
it's purple.
Blue.
Gray, blue.
Real.
Yellow, purple. Purple, green.
I think it's green.
It's all
Blue.
Blue, purple with a lot of white.
Purple and
Blue, purple, a lot of
yellow.
white.
Yeah, I think it's
Wait.
purple and yellow. but-
Excellent,
It could be
excellent.
green as well. Oh.
All right. Well, guess what? You're all correct. This is a neutral. This one I plucked right out of absolute dead center, zero hue visible whatsoever. So all of those answers are correct. And I think it was Zaynat who said purple, yellow, which is probably the closest answer because that's exactly how you would mix it. Take two complements and mix them together. Gray is also correct here, even though I don't like to use that, but this one is neutral, absolutely dead center. So all answers are correct. All right. You guys did really well on round one. Let's go on to round two. This is a new term. All right. This is a new term for some of us. What is the saturation? Now you have four options here. Four options, right? As we go back to the wheel, we have intense is the outer one. That's really, really bright. Medium is the next band. Subdued and neutral. All right. So IMSN. Intense, medium, subdued, neutral. Ready? All right. So what saturation? I don't care about the hue. Just the saturation. You're going to say intense, medium, subdued, or neutral. Go.
Medium.
You guys did great. That was a trick one to start with. That's medium. That is not as intense as teal can get, as a blue-green can get. That is lowered a little bit. That is a medium. Excellent.
Intense.
Intense.
That's as bright as I can make that green go on my screen. That's intense. That's how you use phthalo green and yellow to make that one, right? All right.
Subdued.
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 Medium.
Yeah.
Medium to subdued.
Exactly. Whoever said that right at the end, medium to subdued. This one's kind of right on that line. Excellent.
Is this not almost like a neutral though? It's kind of
Nope.
a gray neutral. No.
You can
No.
clearly tell
This is
neutral.
neutral.
There's your neutral. There's your neutral.
Neutral.
Right? No discernible hue. If you're seeing a hue, it's just you've got some residual cones firing in a funky way from looking at purple, and that looks a little yellow right off the bat, right?
Yeah, this is fun. We can do all night.
Blue to me, but.
I know, right? This is great. Last year.
Medium.
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 Oh, that's right.
You guys are savvy now. I can't trick you anymore. That is a medium, and let's go out on a fun one.
That's medium. Medium.
Intense.
Medium intense. Medium
Intense. Yes.
You guys are great. All right. We're doing great so far. Third variable is value. Here's the numbers I want. I want numbers here. All right. 0. And my photographer friends, you're going to hate this. 0 for us painters is white. 10 is black. All right. Photographers, they're mixing light. All right. So you'll see if you get a photographer's value scale, they're going to call 10 white. If 10 is everything, right, and 0 is nothing for a painter, that's white is 0 and black is 10, right? Because it's an additive versus subtractive process. All right. So I'm looking for, on a numerical scale, 0 to 10, where 0 is pure white and 10 is pure black. Give me your best guess. We're going to get a lot of debate here on this one.
5.
4.
8. Okay, 5.
8.
4. 8.
5.
4.
4.
Yeah. 4.
7.
Sounds
Oh,
good, except for that
perfect.
7. Everyone sounds good except for that 7. All right. Yeah. 4, 5. This is a 5 as Photoshop defines it, but that doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot. On a lighter screen, I think a 4 would be totally acceptable. Excellent. What's this one?
0.
One.
That's a
One.
1.
Yeah.
Two.
One,
Yay.
One or
zero.
two. One or two.
1 or 2, yeah.
This
One
that's
and
a
a
good one.
half.
1.5. Perfect. Yeah, 1.3257. All right. Square root of pi. This one is 1, and the reason is because you can see a little
A
yellow.
color, some color.
Yeah. If it was truly a 0, you shouldn't be able to see any color, right?
Yeah.
That's pure white. If you can see any color, it's not a 0. And that's an important lesson for a painter, any artist really, because if you have a highlight somewhere in your painting that is 0 and you put pure white on there, and then you have this color, you can't put white for this color. You've got to add some yellow, maybe some purple, to quiet this one down.
Mhm.
Good. How about this one?
Whoa.
7.
7.
Not 9. 9.
Oh, no.
I think it's eight
Eight.
or 7 for me.
6 or 7.
Yeah, it's a 7. It's a 7. Those of you who are saying 9, you're shell shocked because we've been looking at light stuff.
Okay.
Okay? Here, I'm going to jump ahead. I got my 9 here. Here's the 9.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay.
Now if I go back to the 7, see how much brighter it is, right?
Yeah.
This is an almost
Oh.
impossible one. Impossible.
Nine.
Three.
6.
I
5.
got 7.
Five.
At a
5
7.
or 6.
4.
6.
5.
4.
4 or 5.
All right. Hurrah for the win. This one is a 3. Why does this one feel darker? This one has
Right.
Saturated.
yes. Who said
It's
that?
very
That was
it's Maylin. It's very saturated. Yeah.
excellent. Yeah, it's so saturated, it's so full of color, and we're accustomed to seeing color as commensurate with light value. These are 2 terms that I want to differentiate in all of our shared vocabulary minds. Brightness, lightness. Brightness is saturation, lightness is value. This is bright. That's what makes you feel like it's got more color, right? But it's light. It's a value 3. Good work. There's our 9 and last one.
2.
All is good. Just go to Haral. You need value. You're very good at that. Yeah. Were you using, let me ask you, Haral, I'll put you on the hot seat. Were you doing something to allow yourself to see those values a little clearer?
No,
I thought
nothing. I'm just trying to judge,
what I thought I caught you doing, and this is a trick, squinting.
No, yeah.
But you don't have to, but if you squint, it oftentimes intensifies the value, removes the color, and you can see a little more honestly those values. So, all right, you guys are doing real good so far. You ready to put it all together?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
You've
I
got,
want,
Glenn, you've got a question about chroma in the chat.
chroma is saturation.
Okay.
Chroma is Munsell's term for it. It is utterly confusing. I've taught color mixing in theory for years and years. People can never keep chroma straight. They always think chroma is the color, is the hue, I should say. So saturation, I thought was a better word to use. All right. Hue, I've even debated getting rid of hue and call it family, but anyway.
I like Hugh. Keep Hugh.
Well, the problem with hue is there's a bunch of tubes at the art store that say hue on it, and it means something completely different, right? So anyway, I digress. You guys ready to put it all together?
Okay.
We're gonna be color wizards here. I want the HSV name. That's the hue, saturation, value name, right? So we're gonna put all 3 together. I'm gonna show you this one, and I don't see how we're gonna do this if we scream it out. So maybe we should type these up. All right, I got everyone's attention. Open up your chat and type in, here's what we want to type in. Red, orange, yellow, blue, right? Those you can put with R, O, Y, B, things like that. Then you put intense, medium, subdued, neutral, I, M, S, N, and then a number. Does that make sense? So the hue,
That stuff.
I'll start you off. This one is yellow, green, YG, medium, saturation, M, value 4. So you would write YG M 4. Don't all write that right now because we'll move on to the next one. All right, you ready? These are looking good. These are looking really good.
Yeah, I think 2. Enter.
Excellent. All right, I'm seeing a lot of blue, medium, and 2, and those are the correct answers. Outstanding. If you were anywhere in the vicinity of that, give yourself a pat on the back. If you were way off, blame your monitor. Excellent. How about this? Next one.
Definitely yellow.
Oh, don't, no cheating. Whoever's talking, no cheating. Don't tell everyone. They might think that's purple. Love it. You guys are all right there. Yellow, intense, and debate whether it's 2 or 3. I would say probably not as a 4 and a 5. That's much too dark. By the time you're at 4 and 5, you're squinting. You know, it looks a little dark. So again, that if you got a 4 or a 5, turn your monitor's brightness up a little bit, right? All right, good. Let's move on to the next one. This is probably the toughest one so far, right? Why is it tough?
Looks neutral.
Yeah, how the saturation is tough, makes it tough.
And it's blue purple. Light. And
Good. Yeah, we're tricking some of you guys. Yeah, it's hard. P, Zaynab, what's a P? Pink? Goodness. It's red. Red. Excellent. This is actually, and I know this is going to be hard to believe, but this is actually a red orange. This is what Photoshop on your screen calls a red orange. It is subdued, which means that saturation is very low, and it's a value 4 is what it says on Photoshop. So red orange saturated 4. The reason that we have so much variation is because when you have a low saturation, it's hard for us to pick up the hue. I want you to remember that. When you're painting, when you're mixing up color, when you're putting on paint on your canvas, I want you to remember that it's harder to identify the saturation. So don't start with these colors, end with these colors, because they're highly susceptible to other colors affecting them. They're much tougher to pinpoint. So start with your more obvious high saturation ones. And if you are slowing down and say, I can't tell which one it is, know that you're going to be mixing more complementary color in there to deliberately get a grayer tone. Don't just identify it as a red or red purple and then put on a hot pink. That won't match, right? All right, we'll make this our last one.
Let me turn this down.
Neutral. This is neutral.
All right.
Blue purple. Neutral.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm sorry, honey.
Neutral. Okay. No, it's good.
Neutral 6.
Yeah.
According to who? Since when?
According to them, hey, that's it.
Why don't we go ahead and mute again, Hiral?
I don't give a damn.
I'll do that.
Yes, just in case. Yes. We don't want any Tubin moments here. So, all right. And I'm loving what I'm seeing here. And some of you, very savvy. Once you call it a neutral, which it is, once you call it a neutral, an N, there's no need for a hue. Because there is no hue of a neutral. N6 or N7, whatever you're saying, this is an N6, on Photoshop. N6 is the answer, neutral 6, because that's it. There's no hue. what the gift is for you as a painter then is you can mix that out of any color. You can mix that out of any complement, green and red. You can mix that out of blue and orange. You can make that out of purple and yellow, whatever. All right. Got
Don't
lots
you
of
think,
options.
can I ask a question though? Don't you think it makes a difference as to what you're using? What else is in your painting as
Yes.
to what you should use to make your neutrals?
An incredibly savvy question, and you've sniffed out exactly why we have choice in these neutrals, why you might want to choose one versus the other. If you're making a painting that has a blue sky and orange rocks, and you come across this gray, don't build it out of red and green. Why introduce
Got
two new
it.
pigments? Perfect. All right, you guys did great. I'm going to skip that one because you've passed the test, you passed the quiz, you're all color experts. Now let's add paint to our scenario. What you notice here are the 11 pigments that I recommend students use, plotted as to where they would appear on the color wheel. If they were actually observed as a color, right? If you just slathered a whole wall with it or an object or just, like a color like we just did right here, of cadmium red, of alizarin crimson, of phthalo blue, where would it be? On the wheel. And what you see is most of these are pegged to the outer edges because they're super intense colors. Those are the colors I like to buy. You'll notice there's no browns here. There's no burnt umber, burnt sienna. There's no yellow ochre. I can decode the shorthand here, but I know this is a refresher for a lot of you guys. If you want more information on this, just go to painterscompass.com, painters, P-A-I-N-T-E-R-S, compass, C-O-M-P-A-S-S.com. And I've got a video there that outlines exactly how we got all of these, what their names are, where you can get them, all that good stuff. So, but I'll spare you that. But those colors then in these spots represent tools that we can use to mix. So if I was trying to mix, I think that was Diane, right? Was asking about that how do we make the gray? If I'm trying to make that gray, and I've been making my painting using ultramarine blue, I've been using that a lot. I've been using a lot of cadmium orange. I'm just going to mix those two colors together, and I'll get pretty close to that gray. I'll get about here. It'll just be a little greenish because my cadmium orange is a little too yellow. And I'll just tug that back in this direction with any red I've been using. Maybe I've been using cadmium red. So that color mix will kind of move back in this direction, and I'll end up in my sweet spot, right in my neutral where I want it to be, with equal parts blue and orange and 1/10 part cadmium red to just pull me that last little stretch. That's what's so beautiful about this color wheel is you can actually measure distances more or less, assuming that the tinting strength of the pigments is the same. If these two lines are roughly the same length, then I mix equal parts of the two pigments, and that's where I end up halfway in the middle. And then to get from there to here, I just need a little bit of that red. That red just tugs it a tiny little bit. That's as far as I need the red to pull it. That's it. Just a little bit of red, maybe 1/10 the amount, something like that. Does that make sense? All right. Anyway, this is not a color wheel lecture. That's another lecture, another day. But wanted us all on the same page so that we could understand what we're going to talk about next. So we're all color experts, color theory experts. We're all now composition experts. We have 5 new vocabulary terms for composition. Let's look at artists from the past and see what they've been doing with their artwork. All right, this is a little bit of a history lesson we're going to get here. This is probably our oldest picture that I'm going to include here. There are older paintings that exist, but this is pretty far back. This is pre-oil painting even. So we go back to Masaccio's tribute money. Back in these days, artists didn't use color to push one through the composition. That was not the purpose of color. Color was largely decorative. When you saw a shirt, a jacket, a shawl, when you saw a sky, when you saw dirt, you didn't puzzle over it like you might today. Ooh, do I see whispers of purple in the shadow? Do I see a little bit of yellow over here, trying to wake up my color sensibilities? No, you were pretty isolated in the language that you use color with. The yellow toga would be painted with just shades of yellow, the blue toga with shades of blue, the red one with red. And they were very kind of cut and pasted. You almost feel like this has like a Technicolor, like the old Ted Turner Technicolor, kind of sensibility to it, where they were largely drawn in value. This is value-based image making, and color serves just a kind of a decorative role. Also a symbolic role. Certain characters had certain colors that they always existed in, that would define their station in life or their role. If you see a Mary and Christ, a Virgin Mary, she's always going to be wearing what color robe? Blue. Yeah, you're all on mute again, but you're all screaming blue. That's not because, people were painting Mary, hey, Mary, pose for me. No, she's long gone at that point in the Renaissance when people are painting her. She's an icon at that point. There's a certain level of coloristic iconography that goes with that to define it. So color was thought of, iconographically, it was thought of, kind of decoratively, not in terms of, how one would lead the eye through the composition with unexpected color finds. But what we see in this wonderful Carpaccio, which you can go see a nice Carpaccio show down at the National Gallery on view right now, and go ahead and treat yourself to some dinner with some Carpaccio too, why not? And what you see here is the use of the black and the red and the yellow, the gold, to lead our eye through the composition. And again, it's quite decorative. The artist has chosen to just kind of alternate the black and the white as we move from left to right. Are there any red moments up top? Any black moments in the sky? No. Monet might do something like that, but certainly not our boy Carpaccio. He's not thinking that way. And so this neoclassical composition with dynamic elements presents a narrative that we're meant to follow, a stage. And most of these older pictures are either iconic or neoclassical, right? Don't we find that, right? Neoclassical, a stage, and a fairly, kind of regimented horizontal and vertical stage. So our eye is just meant to scan left to right along that bottom frieze. If you go up to the blue, it's just to take a little break. Same thing even as we progress into the Baroque era, out of the Renaissance and into the Baroque era, we see color remarkably muted. In fact, some of you guys are familiar with what today is called the Zorn palette, all right, named after Anders Zorn. Well, Anders Zorn came after these guys. It is more traditionally called a Baroque palette, all right, black, white, usually a red, like a vermilion. Today we might use cadmium red or Venetian red or something like that. And then a yellow, and, again, traditionally more like a yellow ochre or something like that. Today you might use cadmium or yellow ochre or whatever. But out of those very limited colors, and really that's it, black, white, red, and yellow, all the colors produced. Oftentimes, and back in the day, especially back to this Carpaccio, blue was very expensive. And so you used it sparingly, you used it thinly, you used it weakly. You weren't using it a lot. You won't see any purple pigment. That was very expensive. You had to get that in from Iran, as expensive as saffron today, right? So you really had to be careful when you used it. So black, white, red, yellow, they were in much greater abundance, and artists were after different things. So again, these are mostly tonally based pictures, tonally based, not coloristically based images, and color just serves kind of a decorative element. And here, very much like the Carpaccio, you can trace the little dots of red. Can you see them? The little dots of red that dance across the frieze at the bottom. I would probably start with Velasquez himself, that is him depicted, his hands, his palette. We can't include the Order of Santiago crest because that was painted posthumously, but 1, 2, down to the Infanta, up into the mirror reflection, across to some of these flowers, and even to the hands of our court members. And there's a little bit on this boy's dress down here that you get a little bit of red down there. You might be able to pick that up, but that red kind of moves you left to right through the composition because it's primarily a value-based picture, and just the tiniest little accent of that red is enough to lead your eye through. Vermeer's view of Delft, again, just very descriptive, very limited palette, that same Baroque palette again. A little bit of blue introduced here, so a little bit of a prismatic palette with a red, a yellow, a blue, plus the black and the white. Of course, they would have had some browns at their disposal as well. And you can see how the red roofs on the left in abundance kind of yearn for that one red mark if you can see my cursor on the right side, and even that wooden opening over here. Conversely, you get your highest density of blue slate on the right side over here, which then yearns for the smaller blue notes at the left. So kind of a yin and yang. He would not have thought in those terms. He wouldn't have known that term, but that kind of presence and absence, that density and sparsity to dance you across the composition to get you to scan. Right? Each of these pictures using the red in very similar ways. Isn't that funny? All four of these pictures, landscape and figure, leading us in the same way. Interior and exterior, leading us in the same way. Now, fast forward a little bit. I'm not going to show you all of art history, but fast forward to American Shores and Albert Bierstadt's Manifest Destiny paintings, right? So these paintings are done at a time when America is new and young, and many people have not traveled west. And these intrepid painters would either go west or make paintings based on the stories that they were getting from west and up north into New York and such. But this was meant to be fairly documentary and also inspiring. That idea that we are supposed to be beckoned to the call of American Manifest Destiny. We should go and colonize the country and make it ours, and that there's beauty amongst the hardship that you're going to face as you move out west, get your land. And so Bierstadt uses some of the tools that he's learned from the past, from those artists of the past, with that dark Velázquezian foreground, and this time he's pulling us back, right? You feel yourself swept, dynamic composition married up with a little bit of neoclassical, that it's a stage, of course, but that stage beckoning us deeply through that Z plane as we bank to the left and then hard to the right through the valley. We're yearning to go deeply into the space, not left and right only laterally like in the previous four images, but now depth-wise. All right. Again, a very similar palette, not woken up too many modern colors yet, because this painting precedes the Industrial Revolution. We're not going to get those brighter colors just yet, but we are right on the precipice of it. This lovely Boudin. If you don't know Boudin, everyone knows Corot. Go learn about Boudin. He's just as good as Corot. And they've got a great collection at the National Gallery of Art for those who are local. But Boudin is the kind of the beginnings of Impressionism. This is where you see the seeds of Impressionism being laid, a transition point from the artists like Bierstadt to the artists like Monet that you're more familiar with. And we see color starting to take on a more active and descriptive role in leading us through the composition. Tonalism is beginning to fade and colorism is beginning to rise. You see artists looking for color in unexpected places. Do you see the blue in the bottom left? That's sand and rock. There shouldn't be blue there. Carpaccio, Masaccio would have never put blue in those places. They would have been darker yellows or darker browns at most. But an artist who opens his mind to the color effects that light and shadow are actually allowing will see and will be up to the task of educating the public on that. And you see the warms in the mountains. You can even see, can you guys see the warmth in the clouds? Can you see the pinks? Can you see the corals? Can you see the lavenders up through here? Or, gosh, we're so good as colorists. Can you see the red, purple, subdued value 3? That's up there. Gorgeous. All right. It's not until we get to full Monet, right? The exemplar of colorism that we truly shed tonalism. This is one where you can actually pick up some value. If you squint at this picture, it doesn't dissolve into gray. You do have some light and some dark. But this is all about recognizing the potential for finding color in every square inch of the canvas. And now we're painting a totally different way. We are getting into that modern compositional format. Why? Because Monet is not painting objects. And this may come as a shock to everyone, but haystacks aren't that important to paint. Monet changed our thoughts, right? Monet made haystacks a legitimate subject matter. But historically, no one was painting haystacks, except maybe a little bit of Peter Bruegel, talking about genre scenes. But this is painting haystacks for the sake of painting haystacks? No, for the sake of painting light. He loved the way that diaphanous form, the stitching of the hay, captured the light and refracted it in different ways. So he was able to, without pushing himself too far, see pinks and reds and purples and greens and blues and all colors under the rainbow in the hay bale, in the grass, in the sky even, right? There's green in the sky there, people, right? That's a colorist's way of thinking. And so now what he's thinking about, and what many of us, I think, as modern painters who love the Impressionists think about, is balancing the density of colors, not values, but colors. So he plants green in its most robust iterations down in the ground, and then weakly in the sky, so that our eye connects from top to bottom, right? You can feel that motion of the green. The red obviously shows up in the hay bale, but also on the ground plane in these tiger stripes to the right, little kiss on the top of that tree, and then of course scattered weakly throughout the sky. So now we've got two options. We can paint tonally, and we can paint coloristically. And artists like Edvard Munch, this incredibly famous picture, is balancing both. And Munch very much understood, all of these artists very much understood, not just the dogmatic hows of composition and color, but the whys. The great artists always understand and ask why. Why will I use this color palette? Why will I use this composition? What will it convey in myself, and what will it convey to my viewers? And when you are trying to create utter peril and angst in Munch's Scream, you're going to do it with these heavy and powerful, rich reds up in a sky, and then you're going to have that weight pressing down on the much more tonalistic figure and the body. So he's taken the red out of the figure and he's put it up in the sky. He's undermining our expectation of what is supposed to exist, and that's unsettling to us. Look at the composition, highly dynamic. All right, so there's a lot of energy and a lot of motion. There's the icon in the center. The iconic composition of the figure is in the center, but it's modernly cropped at the bottom. Modern compositions undermine. Remember that Pearlstein when he cut off the head? When you cut off a piece of a person, it's a violative act. So he's cut off the person. He's locked and anchored and rooted that poor fellow, in that scene. Couldn't move if he wants to. All right. So while he's frozen there, made the icon, but then planted, Munch is also then pushing us deeply into the space and pressing down on us with that powerful color. Of course, all that circular motion. That's why this picture feels so horrifying, because you feel like you're trapped, just like him. You have no legs to move. And you feel that call, that zip to either move back or move forward. Everything's moving too fast and you're stuck. You're planted, right? That's why this is so haunting. Let's fast forward even a little bit more. All right. So that's like the teens, the 20s, early 20th century. Let's get to the father of push and pull. You ever heard push and pull? This is the guy who invented that term, Hans Hofmann. He educated all of the abstract expressionists at his school in Provincetown, and was kind of a defining element. You may not know his work as well, but you know the work of all those who he inspired. But this is his work on the right, and he was very much interested in, once you divorce the elements of the picture from associations to the real world, can you create depth? Can you create space? Can you even create something maybe called light and shadow? Right? If these are not meant to be blocks that exist in the real world, it's not a still life of blocks floating on a table in a room. But if you just say, what can the paint in and of itself do in its formal qualities? What can a hard edge do versus a soft edge? What can an intense color do against a subdued color, a light versus a dark, a large versus a small? And he was interested in just those formal push and pull of colors, their exertion, divorced from reality, divorced from, like anything in the real world. What does that do? And that, of course, inspired many artists who came under his wing and he tutored, like de Kooning, Woman and Bicycle. You know, the psychic power. This is almost as arresting as the Scream. All right, and just a quick history lesson on de Kooning. De Kooning didn't hate women. De Kooning was not a misogynist. This is not why he rips apart women in painting after painting. Women had been the subject of beauty since the dawn of art. You know, you paint Venuses or Marys or Ophelia, Adonises, whoever you want. You know, and you see all these beautiful depictions of women. He's coming out of World War II, seeing the world just shattered. And so he takes the symbol of beauty historically and he does this to it. So he wants to, create that angst and that frustration and that uncertainty that the world has at this moment, that undoneness of the world. He doesn't want to tether these to be real people in real places. So he utilizes some of that push-pull. He utilizes some of that, disassociation from reality and thinks of the canvas as a form for exploring ideas rather than just depicting realism. Now, an artist who took that much further, that disassociation from realism, is this one. So we were going to talk about in Rothko all over. No, this is the guy who really went for the all over composition. Pollock's work was about, of course, not utilizing any referential subject matter. There is, if you see a rabbit, or if you see a bumblebee in there, that's on you. That's a Rorschach test. He's not putting that in there. He's not trying to put that in there. He's trying deliberately to not have any associative realism present in the picture, but rather to unlock that, again, that psychic fury, that energy of undoneness, of chaos that anyone after World War II would have had. They don't really have a term PTSD after World War II. They had shell shock, right? That's a word that you've heard around that time, World War I, World War II. They didn't have a term for it because everyone had it. Yeah, because we'd all been so wounded by death and devastation at such a scale. And these are artists that are trying to make images, use this visual language to tell those stories. All right, so they disassociate from the real world and create these skeins of color. Now he's trying to balance. He's trying to organize it so it's not heavy to the right or heavy to the left, because what might that do? That might instruct. That might be too didactic and tell a story that you must move from left to right. He doesn't want to do that. He wants you to move throughout everything. That's true chaos, right? All right. Luckily, wounds of the past heal, thank goodness. And generations unfold, from, one after the next, and the memory and the pain and the suffering doesn't pass along in whole cloth to the next generation of artists. So these last couple of artists are contemporary. They're actively painting today, many of them quite young, under 50. And working. So Kehinde Wiley, you might know his work. So he is combining Pollock-esque all over composition meant to flatten, patternize, simplify, and speak to a little bit of chaos and energy with more traditional iconic compositions in his portraits. All right. And smashing together those two in some very interesting ways, the chaos and the order. If you know about Kehinde Wiley's work, he is like Quentin Tarantino did in The Inglourious Basterds, rewriting history, using his canvas as a playground. What if the Renaissance painters of the past weren't just painting white European males? What if they were painting a contemporary African American or African sometimes people in his community, that he interacts with? And so he's painted a lot of friends, he's painted a lot of rappers, he's painted a lot of athletes, and they show up in these scenes, that kind of rewriting of history. But there's an angst and there's a frustration there, and that's where the backgrounds come in, right? They're meant to, add that uncertainty and that chaos that we get from the all over composition, but then put that in tension with the icon in the center. Right? We've got Alyssa Monks, who teeters on the edge of abstraction, even though her work is absolutely photorealistic. if you get up close, and this one, I apologize, is a little blurry on my screen, a little pixelated on my screen, but when you see Alyssa Monk's work up in front, we saw one earlier, the eye, that you'll recall, that was hers. What we realize is that this is an artist who is painting like Monet with that kind of thick piece of color. She's more interested in being attentive to the physicality of the paint, the qualities of light and dark, than the image that is produced there. The image is a result of all of those singular marks. So she's using composition, more modern compositions, sometimes iconic, not in this one in particular, but there's that interference between the modern smashing forward, pressing up against the picture plane, and then the veils of some of these water curtains, or sometimes underwater, or lately she's been just kind of photoshopping landscapes on top of the image or behind the images, but smashing those two realities together to find her place. You can see this one is primarily a red-green composition, very low saturation on the green, the red only a little bit higher in the lips, and maybe an orange, kind of into the skin, but a very simple compositional format, balancing those two complementary colors. And our final artist I'd like to show you today, Neo Rausch, much more abstract, does not think of the canvas as a place for creating a single reality, but rather multiple realities that can exist simultaneously, kind of in the spirit of any of our pluralists, David Solly, who else might you guys know? Gerhard Richter sometimes does like this, Larry Rivers, thinking of the canvas as a place where you don't have to create a photographic representation of anything, but you can use that composition to explore ideas. He always uses this high key color language married up with strong tonalism, right? So he's kind of got both the tonalism and the colorism present in the work, and it gets very, very eclectic. This, would you say, is kind of all over and a little bit of neoclassical? It's hard to say, more all over, because it's uncertain and, kind of building. There's a little bit of dynamism as well. If you can read that house, that kind of row of houses from top right to back left. So historically we see, these artists changing their relationship. How different is this image, of course, and its treatment of color, of space, of the continuity from an artist like Masaccio? How different is an artist like Bierstadt from Monet? Even though they are so similar, there's such a kinship between those two, just the different sensibilities. So I ask you, now that we're at the end of our composition and color theory lecture, now that you're empowered to think about compositions in terms of 5 different variables and the impact of each of those, now that you're empowered to think about color as having hue, saturation, and value, that you are in command, you wield those powers of light and dark, of intense and subdued, of red versus orange versus purple versus yellow. How should we use composition and color theory on our own abstract and realist artwork? However we damn well please, because we don't follow dogma. We don't say everything must get cut in half, or never do cut in half. Everything must have rule of thirds, or nothing should have rule of thirds, golden rectangle or not. We've been empowered with knowledge of these different variables that are in play, and we command through all of those methods and machinations how we are going to design compositions that work for us. So good luck. I wish you guys luck as you proceed forward with your art. And if there are any questions, I know we're probably at about an hour and a half, but if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer for anyone.
I had a really quick question. On the Neo Rausch painting, you said it had elements of tonalism. Can you point those out to me?
Absolutely.
I don't see that.
Yeah, let me go back to that. So if you squint at an image, which should reduce some of the color elements and just focus in on the dark and the light, you start to see the structure. Now his images are very active, so it's not going to separate into 2 or 3 or 5 shapes. It's going to separate only into some larger some smaller more multi facet shapes. But you see the man's, I'll circle the man's suit jacket here, this suit jacket over here, her shirt right through here, this head
Okay.
up through here. They are devoid of color in the language that Monet would have been exploring color.
Okay.
Those are grays that are dark, blacks that are just plain old black. These whites are relatively devoid of color, might be just pure white on the canvas. And then he's contrasting that with like, look at this, like day glow yellow and phthalo and yellow and just pure phthalo, kind of over here and white, saccharine sweet, high saturation pigment, some muted tones, some dark tones. It's everything. He is throwing everything and the kitchen sink at a painting, and that's tonalism, that's colorism. There's some perspective, there's anti-perspective, like De Chirico. There's clearly there's multiple scenes happening here, at the same time. It's
Thank
wild.
you.
Yeah, great question.
I think it's almost like a little piece of Bruegel,
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
pull out just a section of that and blow it up a bit.
Absolutely. Yeah. Bruegel or Bosch, we kind of saw that Hieronymus Bosch, that energy that's in there. Yeah. If you don't know Neo Rausch, I mean, he's a fantastic contemporary painter. I mean, he's in museums. He still shows at galleries, but the work often goes to museums. He's a he's a German painter. I think he's still pretty young. I can't remember if he's in his 50s or under 50, but just really a great painter.
Yeah.
Yes. Excellent. Well, if there are no other questions, then you know where to find me if you would like to follow up. Of course, I teach at the Compass Atelier, where I am right now. We are, and I'll just put a little quick plug if you don't mind, Hiral and Frank, just a little quick plug. Our Master Artist program is the backbone of what we do here. I teach that 4 days per week. It is that 3-year program you might have heard about, soup to nuts. Starts off at basics, again, those basics that you may or may not have ever had, like how to set up your easel properly and why that actually matters in terms of your drawing skill, to drawing skills, to color skills, to old master techniques, and how we take all of that great technical knowledge and utilize it in the service of contemporary ideas. Our thesis show is coming up in January and February at Strathmore Mansion. So some news will be coming out around that. Follow me at on Facebook or Instagram, wherever you are, and you'll see some notes about that, or at thecompassatelier.com. You can find information about that show. And if you'd like to join the Master Artist program, our next cohort starts in April of 2023, but we only have, I want to say 3 or maybe 4 spots remaining. And then we don't open up enrollment again for another 3 years. So if you're interested in joining us and making yourself into a professional artist, I know we've got many current and graduates that have joined us here, and exciting to see what you guys are doing. And every program we find, greater and greater interest in being professional artists, and our network and our connections just keep on growing and growing as the time goes on. So anyway, if you're interested in that, compassatelier.com, you can find more information on that. Otherwise, love to see you for a weekly painting through the lens class, or any of the other offerings, classes or workshops that we have here.
Glenn, I'm sorry. Quick question. I love how you demystify color and mixing paint. I've been painting for a while, and it's sometimes I struggle with that. I still do. I wanted to know, do you offer like a class such as the one that you just, provided now, but in person and maybe more involved?
Yes.
Unfortunately, I was doing this while I had to cook and tend to kids. So I would love to just like immerse and take in your knowledge as far as painting and color theory, because that's been like with particularly oils, when I was painting with them, I couldn't mix the colors again, right? I would always worry like, oh, I can't mix it, get the right color again. So then I would just like, okay, I need to finish this like now, or otherwise I can't like remedy it.
Absolutely. Well,
So-
so much of our difficulty with color is just not having a rubric to follow and just like trying and hoping that does this feel like it? Does this feel like it? If I add more, will it feel more like it? But having these quantifiable terms, hue, saturation, and value really do assist. Yes, is the answer to the question. We will periodically have workshops, 1 day or 2 day workshops on color mixing. I'll often even I can do this on Facebook. Sometimes I'll go Facebook Live, or we'll have a little quick buy a ticket, come to a lecture. We've done that in the past. So just keep an eye on, I would say, my Facebook page, join my mailing list, which you can find on the homepage of Compass Atelier, to make sure that you're getting updates about when we do offer those types of classes, those standalone classes. And of course,
Okay.
wonderful organizations like MAA who have had me do that lecture. I can't remember, 3 times probably over the last decade. So we popped that in. This was a little amuse bouche of that today, just a little pared down version of it today. But
Okay.
yeah, we can take a deep dive.
All right, great. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Thank you, Molly.
Yeah, so I would say thank you so much, Glenn. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
Fabulous. No words. This was so informative, and I can see your passion and generosity, sharing your knowledge deep down. So beautiful, so beautiful. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I am so glad I made a choice calling you here. So we had wonderful time. I learned so many things from you. So yeah, see you
Well, thank
again.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Don't be a stranger, guys.
Thank
know
you
when
so
to find me.
much.
Very
Thank
much,
you.
Glenn, and
Thank you, Frank. Thank you, everyone. The audience
you,
was
Haral.
so captive today. Hope you enjoyed. Bye. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Glenn.
thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, all.
Thanks
Good
so
night.
much.
Thank you, Glenn.
Thanks, Mita. See you soon.
See you soon. Thank you.